Што ќе значи доаѓањето на Доналд Трамп на чело на Соединетите Американски држави за Украина? Актуелната администрација побрза да испрати последен пакет помош. Дали Доналд Трамп ќе ги исполни своите предизборни ветувања и ќе побрза да ја заврши оваа војна која бесне веќе 3 години, или сепак тоа ќе остане само дел од предизборната реторика? Јас сум Кристина Атовска, добре дојдовте во уште еден лавиринт. Одиме во украинската престолнина, каде разговараме со пратеничката Yevheniia Kravchuk, пред која, меѓу другото, беше и презентиран оној план за победа на председателот Зеленски, а пратеничката Kravchuk неодамна беше и во САД, каде ги следеше изборите таму и секако се врати назад со одредени ставови и мислења кои ќе ги слушнеме сега. Што значи доаѓањето на Трамп за Украина, но и како очекуваат да се спроведе оној план за победа кој го најави украинскиот председател Володимир Зеленски. Одиме во Киев. Ms. Yevheniia Kravchuk, member of the Ukrainian Parliament, thank you very much for joining the program and for talking for Labyrinth.
Thank you for inviting me.
First, I have to ask about the situation in the last 24 hours. We read and we watch the news. There were huge attacks on a few cities. Kryvyi Rih is between those cities. So what is the situation in this last 24 or 48 hours?
So actually the situation in the 24, 48 hours, it's pretty much the same as the situation of the last months. Especially in the last months, Russians had been launching attacks with the guided bombs. Guided bombs go to Kharkiv, to Zaporizhia, to territories that are close to the front line, and of course ballistics. So ballistics came to Kryvyi Rih just a few hours ago, and it was the apartment building, and basically from the 5th to the first floor there were destructions and people under debris. Also Russia had been launching drone attacks every night pretty much, especially on the capital city, Kyiv. So every night there is siren, there is a drone attack. Of course, these drones mostly are being either destroyed by air defense, or we use the jamming machines, so they would lose the the track where they're going. Sometimes these drones would turn them and they go to back to Russian territory, even to Belarus. But nevertheless, when drone is being handled in the city, the parts of these drones, especially if it contains the explosives, can put on fire a house or apartment building or like a business center or something. So that was the case. So it looks like that it doesn't have a military sense. All these attacks, especially on on the cities, they do not have a military purpose, but that's just pressure on civilians. So there would be fatigue and people would be frustrated and unable to go to work or go to school because they had another sleepless night.
Yes, I remember the situation. I was there during the first months of the war, and it's really enabling people to live their normal lives wherever they are in Ukraine, not just in the cities that are under strong bombardment. Let's talk a little bit about the victory plan of the Ukrainian President, Mr. Zelensky, and later we will talk about the new situation in the whole world, actually, about the new elected American President. But first, let's go through the victory plan that Mr. Mr. Zelensky presented to you in the parliament. So first of all, what was the atmosphere in the parliament and the opinion of the MPs about this victory plan?
Well, overall, of course, all Ukrainian MPs and all the parties, disregard whether it's the party of majority or the opposition, they are in favor, of course, of this victory plan. Besides the public speech of president in the parliament that we all heard, there was also a closed meeting with the leaders of fractions and groups in the parliament, where President Zelensky also gave some, more information about, the plans, how to work with our partners, and the situation on the battlefield, and so on and so forth. So there is this contact with the parliament, and a few weeks ago there was also a close meeting with the military and Minister of Defense, where he also informed fractions and groups on the situation, how the aid is coming, what we are lacking and what we need more. So this contact is very tight with the parliamentarians, and of course there is public part, but also the close part was the numbers and the names of the weapons that Ukraine would need for different points, but also about this economic part. So there are some few things, of course, that are new, and I would actually connect it. Some messages were already in this plan that was presented to, at that time, the candidates to the presidential position in the United States. And actually, some of them were very well received, especially by Republicans and Trump himself. For example, there was a new point about possible deployment, let's say that, of Ukrainian troops, military troops in European continent, in different countries. So they would replace, at least partially, the troops of United States. And that's what actual Republicans and Trump himself wanted. And he stated that, we have to care less. But it's not like that it's a care less, but it's less boots on the ground out overseas, as Americans say. And of course, it cannot be done now because our troops are busy with fighting the big army, Russian aggressor. But of course, after the peace is settled, Ukraine can be actually a donor of security on the European continent. Also, some things were new in economic part about the natural resources, and it's also sort of a signal to American side, especially because if Ukraine gets occupied, more than it's occupied right now, it's not just Russians who will have the access to natural resources like lithium, titanium, and other, but also, it would be used by Chinese. And if Republicans and Trump himself see China as, big competitor, and the issue has to be tackled, they should be interested in this as well. But of course, for Ukrainian security and long-lasting peace in European continent, Ukraine has to have feasible security guarantees. And we say, when we talk about NATO, we understand the membership cannot be overnight. But we need to have an invitation so we could join. I mean, we're joining EU not tomorrow. It's going to be years. As well as NATO, we understand that it's going to be years. But if we have invitation, then Russia will understand that for sure Ukraine will never be a gray zone between, Russia and NATO, because what actually the main aim of Russians is to freeze the war, so they could regroup, build more weapons, because they're running out of tanks and artillery. That's why they have to be this buying and getting North Korean shells or Iranian shaheds or bombs or missiles. So they want to regroup, but this time has to be used to give Ukraine enough of weapons, and that's also point I think number 3. So it's not nuclear, right? But it's enough of long range missiles that Russia would never attack Ukraine again, because that would be too painful. The sanctions would hit really hard, and Ukraine can fight back really hard on the Russian territory. That's why we've been producing a lot of drones ourselves. And at the same time, when Russians are sending drones to Ukrainian cities, there was a huge attack on Moscow, for example. You can never imagine that just 2 years ago, that Ukrainian drones would be reaching Moscow.
Yes, we can see that lately, and the Ukrainian offensive in the Russian territory, but still there are demands for more long-range missiles for Ukraine. So I want to go a little bit back to NATO point. So one of the first thing in this victory plan is joining NATO. We are all well aware about Ukrainian aspirations to enter NATO or to join NATO, but what is problematic for most of the leaders at the moment is the momentum. And they say that they would wait actually for the war to end and then to start all the negotiations with Ukraine for joining the alliance. But this is the first spot of this victory plan. So, and the leaders, as we heard, they're not willing to do that, to invite Ukraine at this very moment. So what does this mean for Ukraine?
As I said previously, that's why it's the first point, right? So we mean the invitation. So we understand that Ukraine has to go through inner processes of capabilities, compatibilities, or the changing of the legislation is something. What we do for joining EU, for example. But the invitation is sort of a signal to Putin and to Kremlin that Ukraine will not be left alone. And it cannot be, as I said, a buffer between, the Northern Alliance and the aggressor. So that's why it's basically not enough just to say in a press release that the NATO doors are opened and each country can decide whether they want or not want to join. But for us, NATO is an ultimate, goal, because it is a security guarantee of non-repetition. So we understand we cannot join like this year, right? We understand it's going to be a process, but we need a firm reassurance that at the end of the day, will be a member of North Atlantic Alliance, and of course, at these, even for negotiations, if you put that right, Ukraine has to have a strong position, and if we would have one of the points during the these negotiations at the table, that Ukraine will be at the end of the day a member of NATO. It is one of the positions that we want to have while we'll be negotiating. And of course, negotiations cannot be put as let's just push all the countries push on the weaker side to say, okay, well, we're done. We have to sign capitulation. No, because it will have long-lasting impact on Europe, on the world itself, if the bully and if the aggressor will be victorious. And it's, when we talk about the situation after the election of the new American president, it's the same thing. If Trump says he's a strong leader of a strong country, and the United States is not just one of the countries. It's the leader of the free world. It's the superpower. So if superpower basically loses face in front of the aggressor who doesn't respect the law, doesn't respect the borders, is allied with this axis of evil, North Korea and Iran, and so on and so forth, it will just mean that this club of aggressors will do whatever they want in other parts of the world.
Yes, meanwhile, Russia is signing and ratifying some agreements with the countries you mentioned for military help and cooperation in the future, which is a little bit scary at this point, considering the fact that we have the war on European soil for almost 3 years now. And I want to ask one more thing about the negotiations. You mentioned Ukrainian President Mr. Zelensky, when he speaks with world leaders, he often says that the victory depends on the allies and not on Ukraine and on Russia, and he said that he's not willing to have any negotiations with Russia. So will Ukraine insist on some kind of solution without negotiating with Russia, or what's the plan? Or there are some other plans? Because if we see the history so far, every conflict ends with negotiations and sitting on the table with all involved parties in the conflict. So what does this mean, that Ukraine doesn't want to negotiate with Russia? What's the other way?
Ukraine and President Zelensky and all of the officials said for many times that for example, for the second peace summit, it's okay to have Russia if Russia is willing to talk on normal matters, and it's not normal matters do not include anything they speak right now, because if you would listen to Kremlin right now, Ukraine has to give up even more territories, even those that are not occupied. So it's complete nonsense. For example, today, I don't know when you will air this this interview, but when we are speaking, it's the second anniversary of liberation of Kherson region. It's one of the regional centers in southern Ukraine that was occupied. So we liberated Kherson in 2022 in November, 11th of November. And right now there is another region that is in the south and is partly occupied, Zaporizhia region. So the southern part, which is on Azov Sea, is still under occupation, but the regional center, the oblast center, is under Ukrainian control. So basically, Kremlin says, oh, we put these regions into our constitution, so you have to withdraw your troops from Kherson and Zaporizhia. Does that sound like a normal plan for negotiations? Of course not. So President Zelensky is saying we need to be with the democratic, at least part of the world, on a common grounds that we do respect the territorial integrity, we do respect the that aggression of one country against another country is not normal. We need money for restoration of Ukraine. That's why we want these frozen assets to be spent on rebuild of Ukraine, because we have huge losses, in infrastructure and in housing, in everything. So basically, why this peace formula was formed, and the victory plan, because we want to be frank that we need to return the people that were abducted, kids that were abducted. We need to have the guarantees of non-repetition, and then of course we could sit and talk, and at the end of the day, as you said, every war ends up with some sort of treaty, right? And even the Second World War, someone from German side has to sign the capitulation, basically, but it cannot be put that it's the easiest way to influence Ukraine and to say, okay, Ukraine has to do to handle all the losses, to say that we forget about the occupied territories, and even more the people that are occupied and being tortured and being abducted and put to pressure to obtain the Russian citizenship. So basically, we have to agree what terms is okay, not just for Ukraine, but for the whole world, to say, to keep this world order that was created after the Second World War as as normality.
And Ukrainian troops entered Russia in order to gain a better position in the negotiations. And today we heard the news that the Russian troops organized in Kursk region and they're trying to make a big offensive. So do you have any information what will happen to Ukrainian troops there? Are they withdrawing or they're staying in the Kursk region?
Well, they are staying in the Kursk region. I'm not, a military person. I'm not representing even the Committee on Defense, so I cannot give the details. But of course, our strategy is to keep presence of Ukrainian troops on the territory of Kursk, because actually it was a game changer. Even all of these plans that are circulating somewhere in Western media about, freezing the conflict on the front line that is already existing actually bumps into Kursk region, because that means that Ukraine, Ukraine should keep part of Russian territory? No, we don't want it. So actually, it is one of the points when we would be at the end of the day talking about, the outcome of the war and how to end it. So in our national interest right now is very important to have the war not just on Ukrainian territory, but on Russian territory. So Russian people would be, under this pressure and pressuring their government to end it, because, we're not fighting a war with civilians. We are targeting just military objects. Even all these drones that are they're going to either the factories that produce weapons, either to factories that produce gas for military, for tanks and fuel for tanks, and also the aerodromes and everything. So it's on the military objects, but still it is happening on the Russian territory. And so in first days of the full-scale invasion in 2022, it was pictured by Kremlin that it's going to last, like 2 weeks. It will be easy, just relax. And now it is influencing Russia itself. And the more it will be painful for the aggressor, the sooner they will be getting to the idea that, it has to be stopped, but it has to be stopped not by Ukrainian capitulation.
Yes, plus there is a lot of pressure from the inside because people are also tired in Russia from this war, and not all of them support the war, so they really have some pressure from everywhere to end this war. And I have one more question about the victory plan before moving to global politics. 3 points remain secret while Mr. Zelensky presented the plan to you. Why was the need for secrecy? And you mentioned that there was some closed meetings after this presentation. So did he tell you about these secret points of the agreement?
Well, these secret points, of course, they contain a very sensitive information on the military side. So, the names of the weapons, numbers of the weapons. Of course, wouldn't want to disclose this information. So this information was shown to those partners that actually provide these types of weapons. And as well, it contains the part on the economic points about these natural resources and where they're situated, which is also, sensitive information. So we do not want to disclose it. But although those countries that can provide needed military support, they have this information.
Ms. Kravchuk, you just came back from Washington. You was in United States during the presidential election as part of the OSCE observation mission, mainly in Washington. So first of all, your opinion about the American elections, about the process in itself, and then of course I would like to know your opinion and the opinion of the whole Ukrainian parliament about the new American president. And this is very important at this moment because during the election campaign, he was saying a lot of things about ending the war in 24 hours, which is everybody, all of us think it's impossible to end the war in 24 hours. And there is one more thing when it comes to Mr. Donald Trump is the fact that he has some close relations with Russian President Putin. So what is your opinion, and what is the opinion and the atmosphere in the whole country, in Ukraine, about Mr. Trump coming back to power?
Well, first of all, it's a choice of American people, so we can just accept this choice and work with the new administration that will be coming in the end of January. So far, until the 20th of January, Joe Biden is still president and can do some steps that will be that influence the war in Ukraine. So first of all, the money that were allocated by the Congress have to be spent, and that's the main, I guess, idea for the work of the current administration. And they already made it public that yes, they want to actually spend this $6 billion in military support. So about the process at first. Indeed, I was as an observer in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. It was quite calm in these territories. Its American system is very much different from those that we have in our countries, both in Ukraine or North Macedonia, because it doesn't matter how many supporters you have from both sides. It depends. You have to have a majority in the state. So if there is a majority, basically all other voters from for another candidate do not matter in the overall run, because it's just this electoral college that counts. And obviously, Maryland was blue from the very beginning. It wasn't a swing state. Washington is also more democratic, so there wasn't a suspense, very much of suspense. Of course, the biggest interest was the swing states or the purple states, and actually, the Trump's victory was very, it's called landslide. So it is. All of the swing states actually turned red, and it's actually part of the the analytics did not foresee it, because everyone said that it will be very tiny difference between the candidates, but at the end of the day, Trump won in huge difference. And I think that with regards the whether Kremlin how try to influence or not, I think for Kremlin the best situation would be if United States would fall for actually civilian unrest, manifestations, courts, and everything. So if the process would be very unsettled and unpeaceful, and even being in Washington, we saw that the White House was put under this line. You cannot get close to it. So the National Guard in DC and in many states was in full capacity, or ready to do something with the manifestation. So basically it wasn't the case, and it's very peaceful. The Democrats already said that of course they understand that Republicans won and Trump won, and the administration is ready to give all the information for this transitional period. So I think this is a very good part, because it's United States did not get into these unrests. How Trump will tackle the war, it has still to be seen, because all of the announcements about 24 hours, about I will make a call and it will all disappear, it wasn't explained, and it's not explained even now. So right now, when we see all this news of the advisor of Trump saying that you have to forget about something about occupied territories and everything, it's not an official position of the administration. So basically, in these upcoming weeks and months, I think we will be on this emotional,
Ups and downs.
roller coaster, because there will be some sources saying this and that, but we need to wait until the official information comes. And even this, that some of the newspapers reported about the first call between Trump and Putin. There was not an official information whether it happened, or whether they really talked, and Kremlin already said it never happened. But I do not believe Kremlin, basically. So we would have to wait until the official invitation. Another thing, and it's also, I've been politician for like 6 years now, and before that I was running campaigns as the communication manager. And from this experience, I understand that what candidate says, it's not 100% the case when the politician gets into power, has all needed information, and how it happens, afterwards. So it was this election rhetorics for the electorate, but now it will be the real world. And I think what Zelensky spoke with Trump was a very good sign. They had a long conversation, and I think the message was right from President Zelensky. He said, okay, Trump is a strong leader of a strong country, so we need strong decisions. It cannot be just, we give up. How it will influence on American image in the world? Of course, badly. Of course, Trump is more emotional, and analytics say, very unpredictable. So basically, if Putin will be, saying, we'll be continuing, we're not ready to a normal understanding of the situation, maybe even the military support could grow to Ukraine, because the Kremlin understands the language of force. But we have to wait until actually it will be a case and Trump will be inaugurated as a president. Maybe something will happen even before that, before the January 20th. But so far, it's we didn't see any official plans from Trump or something that were publicly and supported by American, the traditional transitional administration.
But is there a fear in Ukraine about the election of Donald Trump?
Ukraine had overcome a very difficult years. And I think the biggest fear was already, in 24th of February, when we didn't know whether world will help us, whether we will be having the military support. We, in these years, we developed our own military production with ballistics, with drones and everything that would never been imaginable before 2022. So we do not have any, illusions, but of course we are ready to work with new administration. Because actually the biggest arguments from our side, it's a national interest of United States, so Ukraine would not lose, because it would impact other regions. It will impact what China will do in Indo-Pacifics and everything. So basically that would be our main arguments. And of course, another thing, why Trump won, why the analytics said, why it was the landslide victory, he spoke about economics. And actually American voters said that economics is very important for us, but military aid of Ukraine is economics, because most of the money, they stay in the United States, they stay on the factories that produces military. So basically it flows into the this agenda. We understand that probably the budget support would be the direct budget support to Ukraine would be a bigger challenge now. but it would be a bigger challenge in anyway, because it's now the third year. And we think that since we do have this approval of a loan on $50 billion that will be covered by the frozen assets, that, this part is more or less covered. So actually what we really need from American side is the continuation of a military support. And actually we want to have the strategic vision, because the Russia is not going anywhere as a neighbor. So Ukraine would have to be military strong even after the end of the war, to be sure that it will be too painful, too costly for Russia to attack again. So we need to have this, long-lasting partnership with United States, for example, as Israel has. Israel has in every budget of United States a line that is dedicated to Israel, to military support of Israel.
Yes, but let's see if that will happen. Also, if the support will continue for Ukraine after January, when he will actually take back the office, and current American president, he was in a hurry to send another package of help to Ukraine before the coming of Mr. Trump, because they also don't know what he will do when he takes the office. And the European allies, we can see that they also have worries about Trump coming to power, and we saw some kind of a switch in some leaders in their opinions about giving Ukraine long-range missiles. So do you think that the winning of Trump will make certain European leaders to increase the help towards Ukraine?
Well, for sure, Europe has to think about its own security more. And not just rely on the overseas and the United States. Of course, United States is not going anywhere from NATO, even with Trump being as a president, because he cannot just do it with his executive order, to withdraw. And actually, even in the Republican Party, there is a very strong, at least of the majority, a strong understanding that United States have to be, they have to be in NATO. They have to be this global superpower in the terms of global security. So for sure, I think European countries will be thinking more seriously about their own military spending and how they build their own budgets. And I think that actually Europe had taken this ultimate choice to support Ukraine, since we will be joining the European Union. It's already was seriously announced that by the end of the 2030, I hope both our countries will enter EU. And I was actually in Skopje for the election observation mission as well, when you had parliamentary elections, and I saw these emotions that waited for so long. So I was very happy that the negotiations opened for North Macedonia. But I think for Europeans, it's it will be another wake-up call to think more about defense of Europe and European Union and European continent. So I think the victory of Trump will have impact on that, because it's you have no choice, because you need to be strong, even to talk to United States and to this administration. The administration will be asking, like, are you spending 2% of your GDP on NATO and defense, and as it should be? Oh no, then you should do it. So it will be as simple as that. Ukraine now is spending on military expenses 26% of GDP. So basically, that's a big warning. If you are not building every year your military capacity, having these aggressors on the continent, then at the end of the day, there'll be a war and you'll be, spending 26. Of course, we do not wish anyone to do that, but it's basically the real politics and real life case.
The real politics and real life kicks, and it's very hard for Ukraine, as I said, for 3 years.
No, it's actually 10 years, because 3 years full scale invasion, but 10 years
scale,
since
yes.
the attack on Crimea and eastern provinces. So it's been a long time, and of course Ukraine, as no other country, wants to end this war, but we do not want to end it by capitulation and then to return to the war in 5 years, because Russia will be rebuilt, regrouped, and attacking again.
And let me ask you about the territories, because Donbas region, Crimea, they're all annexed now. And at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned that they insist on keeping some territories that are not under their control at the moment. For example, Kherson or some other cities and the region that are under attack at the moment. So what will be the Ukrainian position about the annexed territories? Because we all know, and we're all certain that Ukraine won't give up ever on these territories we just mentioned, like Kherson, like occupied and liberated territories. But what will happen with the annexed territories like Donbas region and Crimea?
Well, first of all, and no Ukrainian politicians will ever say that it's Russian territory. It's it's impossible. It's against the constitution. It's against the common sense. It's against the international law, and so on and so forth. Of course, we understand that some of the territories are not under control, but that's why we have sanctions. That's why we have we need justice in the terms of international-based order. So, of course, it doesn't matter who the president is, the names of the members of the parliament. It's just impossible to sort of come out and say, yes, Crimea is Russian territory, and we do not say it's Crimea is Ukraine. No, it will never happen. But we understand also that it's very difficult to liberate all the territories in military way. So it has to be diplomacy. Okay, let's hope that the pressure of the world will influence Kremlin, but actually, sanctions could not be lifted unless the world order was be restored. So, or frozen assets cannot be given to Russia before they will release the territory. So we understand that the military liberation is very difficult, long and everything, but on the political position, no politician will say that Crimea is Russian.
As in the European Union, there are huge efforts to deal with these frozen Russian assets and to give to Ukraine to renew and to rebuild these things that are now destroyed, and a lot of cities and villages, of course, are destroyed, unfortunately. At the end, I would like to ask you about the peace formula Mr. Zelensky presented last year, and it was largely accepted, but it didn't contain some specifics inside. It was about environmental safety, a release of prisoners, or nuclear safety. So what is done it was 1 year ago, so what is done during this year for these points? For example, nuclear safety. We know that there is a huge mess around Zaporizhia plants. So what is going on with the nuclear plants? What is going on with the nuclear safety, environmental safety? Because we know the effects of the constant bombardment for 3 years. It goes in the air, in the soil, in the water, and it is basically a threat for normal living. Even if the war ends now, it will still remain as a problem. So what is going on with these other types of safety, if I may say like that?
So basically, indeed, these points of peace formula were formulated very laconically, but on each and every point, there are conferences, that ministerial conference that are being organized, and countries come together and work on a larger document in each piece. For example, at the end of October, there was a big conference in Canada on the point number 4, and it's about the abduction of Ukrainian kids, about how to return the civilian hostages, the prisoners of war, and so on and so forth. And we do value the help of different countries. For example, Qatar had been as a, this part between Ukrainian and Russian sides in return of especially kids. So many kids were returned after when Qatar or Saudi Arabia were negotiating, or the Pope of Rome helped to return some of the hostages, civilians, as well. So on each topic, there is a working group with different countries, and of course, the more countries are at the table, the more solid this document is. But other than that, the whole peace formula is based on the UN Charter, United Nations Charter. And of course, the nuclear security, as you mentioned, is not just important for Ukraine, because the Zaporizhzhia power plant, which is under occupation, is the biggest nuclear power plant in European continent. People still remember what happened with Chernobyl. It was much smaller. It's like, the Zaporizhzhia power plant is much bigger than Chernobyl.
Yes, it can basically kill the whole Europe. And slowly kill the whole
yes,
continent.
for sure. So it has the influence. And for example, the Black Sea, Russians blocked it at the very beginning in 2022. So the food security is also an issue, right? So we cannot ship out the grain. But now, having developed our own marine drones and our missiles, we actually cleared the path in the Black Sea to ship out grain and other products. That's very important, not just for us, but for a huge number of countries that are relying on Ukrainian cereals, grain, and so on and so forth. And even this pollution with marine bombs in Black Sea actually push, is influencing other countries that are in the Black Sea region, because in Bulgaria or in Romania, you can get a bomb on your seaside because Russians, pollute it. So basically, all of these points are being developed with different countries on the, bigger documents that are explaining all of the points.
And Ms. Kravchuk, before I say thank you, what's your next point? Because I know you're very busy. You're very busy in this whole 3 years during the war, and convincing your allies that they need to help Ukraine, because again, it is a war on European soil, which makes a threat for all of us living on the continent. So what's your next step? What are the next activities of the Ukrainian parliament and the Ukrainian president, if I may ask?
As my personal plans, I will go to another very important capital, Berlin. And Germany is experiencing some turbulence in political life with this coalition being cracked and lost. So for us, it's very important that we understand, elections, inner politics, different views on the economy, how it should be handled. But we will work with different parties, and I will talk to different members of Bundestag that the support of Ukraine should not be influenced by any of the political turbulences in the country. So that would be a short-term perspective. And in Ukraine, when I go back, we are in the budget process. We will have to vote for budget for 2025 in the second reading. And of course, it's the biggest spendings are on military, and all money that we earn by taxes, by what we collect inside of the country, is actually being spent to military expenses. So we are getting ready to fight another year and to develop our own military production, to develop, as Zelensky said, our long-range missiles. So we would not need to ask any permissions from any country, we would use our own production.
Ms. Kravchuk, thank you very much for time to join my show, and I hope that next time we talk the war will be finished and you will be presenting how we came to the solution, which is a wish for all of us. For this war to end as soon as possible. And as I said, it's almost 3 years, complete devastation and bombardment, and a lot of lives are lost to this point, and a lot of cities and villages are wiped out, which is really a big, huge, unfortunate and a pity, because the cities I visited, they are very beautiful, so I feel very sorry to see them devastated, and I hope one day to come back in free and rebuild Ukraine and to celebrate the victory and the end of the war together with you. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Тоа беше украинската пратеничка Yevheniia Kravchuk од редовите на партијата на председателот Зеленски, со која разговаравме меѓу другото и за очекувањата од доаѓањето на Трамп на власт. Војната трае веќе трета година и се останува да видиме дали по јануари новоизбраниот американски председател ќе ги исполни своите предизборни ветувања и ќе ја заврши војната како што тоа го тврдеше за време на кампањата. Ви благодарам за вниманието со кое не следевте, се гледаме повторно следната недела. Довидување од мене.